So welcome back students in this series of MERN technology. So in the previous video we have discussed about concepts of React.js. So React.js is used for front-end development. Now so far we have discussed HTML, CSS, JavaScript and React.js. The only limitation of JavaScript is dependent on the compiler that can compile the JavaScript. So for example, you have written a simple A plus B code, so the simple hello world code, and you want to see the output of that particular code. Now, for that, you are completely dependent on a browser. Why? Because a browser only have that particular compiler that compiles or that converts that particular JavaScript code into a output which you can see onto the screen. Now, if you want to run the JavaScript code outside of that particular browser without that compiler, so that is basically not possible. Now, due to that, the JavaScript have a limitation that JavaScript can only be used in a front-end development. So as you can see, we have integrated JavaScript in the HTML and CSS part to perform some kind of functionality onto the website. Then after we have discussed React, that is also running on the browser. We are getting the output of that React codes onto the browser. So that is a limitation of the JavaScript, that we can only execute JavaScript on the browser. That's why we can only use JavaScript as the front-end development part. But now, what if a programmer wants to add some kind of backend process into the website? So for example, you have a website and you have designed the UI of that particular website. Now you want to add some kind of backend, some kind of database on that particular website. For that, you have to rely on a backend developer, or you have to learn a backend language. For example, JavaScript, for example, Python or Ruby on Rails, or we can say PHP or .NET. So you have to learn a second language other than JavaScript for the backend development part. So that is quite difficult for the front-end developers to learn an extra language to develop the backend part of a website. Now, Node.js is the solution for that. Now, Node.js is built with the help of C++ and that particular compiler, the V8 engine of Chrome. The V8 engine is what? The V8 engine is responsible for the compilation of JavaScript code inside the Chrome browser. So, Node.js is what? It's a hybrid of the C++ code and that particular V8 engine. With the help of that, we can execute JavaScript code outside of the browser. So, we don't need a browser now. So we can execute the JavaScript code outside of that particular browser. Now, what is the benefit of Node.js? So the benefit of Node.js is that we can execute JavaScript outside of that particular browser. And now, as we can execute JavaScript outside of the browser, so we can also develop software and server-side technologies, so backend of a website with the help of JavaScript. So now, if you know JavaScript, so you can develop front-end with the help of React, and backend also with the help of Node, Express and many other modules or Node.js, many other frameworks of Node.js with the help of JavaScript. So now you only have to learn a single language and you can build front end as well as the backend of a website. Now let's open the website of Node.js and install the Node.js software package. We have already installed Node.js in the previous module of React.js. But still, let us follow the installation process once again to learn how to install the Node.js. So this is the official website of Node.js. Now just click on download. So this will automatically download the installer of the Node.js module. So once the download is completed, we'll open this. So I'll click open when done. So this is the window we'll get once the download is complete. So this is the installer of the Node.js. You can read welcome to the Node.js setup wizard. So it's a setup wizard for the Node.js responsible for the installation of Node.js. So we'll click on next. Then we have to accept the privacy policy. Next. Here you have to select the installation process, or we can say destination process. So by default it will be C file. Click on next, and just a second, click on next. Automatically install necessarily tools. Click on this and next. And now install. So this will install Node.js on your laptop. After this installation process, if you want to check whether the Node.js or whether the latest version of Node.js installed or not, you have to use the PowerShell. So after this, I'll open my PowerShell. Click on finish. I'll open my PowerShell. You can use a terminal as well. Now here, I'll write down node -v for the version. So this will print the version of the current Node.js installed on my device. So you can check, you can cross verify that the version I have installed is 16.15.0, which is shown on the website as well. So this is how you can install the Node.js. Now we are talking about that Node.js helps us to execute the JavaScript code outside of that particular browser, outside of Chrome, outside of Firefox or any other browser. So how that's happening? For that, let me open the REPL. So search bar, click on the search bar, click on Node. So you'll get this. So this is REPL. The REPL stands for read, evaluate, print and do. So you can read some data, you can evaluate. Evaluate means basically you can write expressions. Expression, for example, let me show you. Let me write a simple data. Let's a equals to 10, b equals to 20, and if I write down expression c equals to a multiplied by b, the output will be 200. So this we can evaluate some kind of JavaScript expression with the help of this REPL. We can print, you can see, we can console.log, you can console.log. If I write hello world, so this you can easily perform with the help of that particular REPL. Also we can loop. So if I, let's me define a variable, let's define I equals to 0, and then we'll write while I less than 10, I'll write down console.log I, and then we'll write down I plus plus, which is increment, which is necessary for that. Let's close the bracket and click enter. So you can see the output of that particular loop. So we can read some data, we can evaluate, we can print, we can loop with the help of this REPL. So now this REPL will help you execute the JavaScript code outside of the browser. Now you can see we are not getting the data, or we are not getting the output of the JavaScript code that we have written inside this REPL on any kind of browser. We are not dependent on any kind of browser. If I close this browser, so nothing will change, it will automatically, it will still run. I will write down console.log, console.log, this is my first Node.js example. So you are getting the output from this. If I write down console.log 25 multiplied by 98, we will get the output of this. So with the help of this node, with the help of this REPL, we can easily evaluate, or we can easily execute any kind of JavaScript code outside of that particular browser. Now we don't use document.getElementById, document.write or alert, anything like that, because we don't have any browser right now. So we can not refer to a document.getElementById method only refers to the element which is resides onto a browser document. So now, as we don't using any kind of browser, so we cannot use that document.write, document.getElementById method, or any kind of method which is related to the DOM, which is related to the document object model. We cannot use that inside the Node.js, but we can execute any JavaScript code outside of the browser with the help of this Node.js and REPL. Now we can also use Visual Studio Code. We can also write scripts of that. So let me show you that. So we don't have to use REPL all the time. So we can now, to practice Node.js, just create a file and just name node sample.js. So now you don't have to take any HTML or CSS file. You can directly write down a JS file over here. Now you will write down, let's me write down console.log sample file. Console.log sample file. Just save this and open the terminal. And on this terminal, if you want to execute this node file, just write down node and node sample.js. You will see the output of this file. So this is the output of the file, sample file. Now let me write down a loop where I equals to 0 while I less than 20. Console.log I multiplied by 5 and I. So this will show me the output of a loop. Let's click on this, you'll get the output. So this is how you can execute or you can get the output of a node file inside the Visual Studio Code with the help of the console. So you don't have to run this on any kind of browser or anything else. You just need a console to get the output of a node module. So this is how files in Node work. So this is how JavaScript in Node works. So the next video will discuss about how to create servers with the help of Node. So thank you for watching this video.